In this video, I want to show you how you can solve and graph an inequality. When we solve inequalities, we still use the same rules that we use in traditional equations. We add, subtract both sides, multiply, divide both sides. But there will be a couple little caveats that we'll see in a few moments. So if we look at this first one, that x plus 3 is less than 5. And what we want to do is we want to find out what values does x have to be to make this true. So all we need to do is subtract 3 from both sides. And then we get x is less than 2. So any value that satisfies this x is less than 2 will work. If I plug in x equals 0, 0 plus 3 is less than 5, 3 is less than 5, it still works. If I did minus 10, a minus 10 plus 7 is a minus 10 plus 3 is equal to minus 7, so minus 7 is less than 5. It's still a true statement. What we can also do is graph this. So we can start with our number line. The pivot point is 2. Now, since we know that we're not going to include 2, we're going to use a parenthesis. But now we have to decide, well, which direction are we going to point that parenthesis? Well, we know from our inequality that x is less than 2. So we know that negative 1, 0, negative 10 will work. So we actually want to fill in to the left of 2. So we're going to use a parenthesis. If this had solved and became, if we started with less than or equal to, we would use a bracket. But in this instance, we're using the parenthesis because we don't want to include that point. Okay, the next problem, 15 minus x is greater than or equal to 3x minus 1. So we're going to solve this. So we're going to subtract 3x from both sides and bring everything else down. So 15 minus 4x is greater than or equal to minus 1. We'll subtract 15 from both sides. So this is minus 4x greater than or equal to minus 16. And then we'll just continue on. Divide both sides by a negative 4. So x is, now we have to be careful here. We know it's going to be 4. But since we divided by a negative, we need to swap the direction of the inequality. So anytime you multiply or divide by a negative number, you know that you need to swap the direction of the inequality. I did not swap it when I subtracted 15 from both sides. It's only when you multiply or divide. So if we're going to graph this one, our point is 4. We know that x is going to be less than 4, so we fill in or squiggle in to the left of that. And since we have the equality portion, we want to include the point, so we will use a bracket. The last type we can talk about is a compound inequality. And what this is going to tell us is that x is between two values. So when we do a compound inequality, we're going to break these up. We're going to have one lone inequality, minus 9 is less than 2x plus 7, plus 1. We can correct that real quick. And then the next part will be 2x plus 1 is less than or equal to 7. So we're going to solve these two inequalities separately, and then we'll combine them after we have finished solving. So in this instance, we're going to leave the variables where they stand, and we'll just move the constants. So we'll subtract 1 from both sides, so we get minus 10 is less than 2x. Divide by 2, so minus 5 is less than x. On the other side, we subtract 1 from both sides. So we get 2x is less than or equal to 6. Divide both sides by 2. So x is less than or equal to 3. Let's make a little erase here and bring in 3. So if we combine these together, minus 5 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 3. To graph that, we'll put in a minus 5 and a 3 on our number line. We know that x is between that, so we know that we're going to shade in the values between them. The first part of the inequality, minus 5 is less than x, or x is greater than minus 5. We don't want to include minus 5, so we'll use a parenthesis. The next part, x is less than or equal to 3, we want to include the point, so we'll use a bracket, and that'll signify that when you see this, that you will include 3 as your point. So that is solving linear inequalities. The thing to remember again when doing these is if you are dividing by a negative, you need to swap the direction of the inequality. Everything else is the same.